Hi, this is Michael G, and we are going to talk about sharpening again, and sharpening convex opposed to sharpening with stones and other types of hard surfaces. Here's the problem, and you've probably seen other videos. Whenever you're using sharpening stone or a system, generally the most important thing at the end of the day is for them is to give you an angle. A very sharp angle, that is. So what happens here is this is your conventional stone or conventional system will give you at the end. This is also a very weak edge, and this part of the edge over here ends up having not enough support, and you lose the sharpness pretty quick. We develop in convex sharpening an edge like that, and if you were to superimpose the two edges, that's kind of the difference. The difference is you have more meat here, you have more strength, and your edge will last longer. What these guys get caught up in is with the stones is almost like a religion. Oh, I don't have the best stone, $100 later. You need this stone, $200 later. $400 later, you got to get a stone to fix the stones because now they're not straight anymore. And what you end up doing at the end of the day is wearing your knives away. Now this is done by a rod, but you get the idea. A knife is not something that lasts forever. It's got metal, and every time you sharpen it, what you're doing is taking away that metal. It's like a candle that burns. The more you burn it, the wick gets less and less. So you kind of end up ruining your knives if you're really not good using the stones, because it's very easy to drop the knife on the stone and then you're pushing it with force, and what ends up happening is you're going to scratch the side of your knife. Now you got to do maintenance to clean this up. Also, if you are doing it by hand and you slip a bit, you're creating an angle. You're instantly creating an angle. Whereas when we're doing the convex, like I said before, you just need some sort of magazine, a thick magazine, so that while you're sharpening, your fingers can keep and guide, and your sandpaper. And what's happening is, I don't know if you could see it, is a natural convex will happen as the knife is pressing. It's going to give under the catalog, as you see here, or some people say mouse pad, and you will get your convex edge. You see, angles become very important because they go bad very quickly. And with stones, angles are really important. But when you're convexing, your angles aren't as critical because you get to them slowly. And we don't use anything mechanized, belt sanders in our videos, which they remove a lot of metal, and you just don't want to remove a lot of metal. So when you get yourself your convex edge, you have more strength in it, it'll last longer, and it's deceptively sharp. It's incredibly sharp. You wouldn't believe how sharp it is. In fact, I forgot to get my newspapers to cut now. Let me get. And of course, they're not here. They're in the other room. I'll be right back. Okay, here we go. Now, we're just going to take any one of these. We'll use my kitchen knife, and in the kitchen knife, you've seen me do this before. No problem. And you see me do this before, where I'm holding the paper and catching it on a bend. Now you really haven't seen this in other people's videos because their knives are just not as sharp as ours. Now, yes, we do have our sharpening compound, but the idea is it's a convex edge. And with the convex edge and your leather strop, and again, this is the way we're doing it, where we hold a knife and hold the strop and strop the knife instead of having the knife going back and forth while your strop is stationary. This will give you a better feel for your angles, and it'll give you a better overall finish. Now tell me, have you ever seen knives catch like this, where they're catching, look at that, it's catching in 3 places at the same time, just from the bend in the paper. This is the kind of edge that we talk about. This is not a professional sharpening edge. This is an artisan sharpening edge, which you can make your knife razor sharp, sharper than you could believe, with just a leather strop and some sandpaper. You've probably seen this in one of my other videos. This is the Mora carbon steel blade, but I even sharpened it more since the last one, or really just stropped it more. And you'll see, again, it'll just catch and cut anyway. And that's what you get with stropping. The edges last longer. They're also easier to maintain, because here's the other issue that you have with conventional angles. As the strop angle, as you're stropping, what ends up happening is you're naturally conforming this area as you're stropping, and it brings it naturally to the edge. Whereas when you're working with this type of edge, you literally have to take off the meat. You have to take off more of your blade to get to that edge. The strop gives you more time on the blade. Like, you can't even tell this is strop really, because I never changed the geometry. And not only that, this knife is also not at its sharpest. Right now, as you see this, there's a limitation to how sharp I can get this Mora. And why is that when you start getting into this ridiculous super sharp, other things become a factor. If you listen, there's no noise here. But now when I get to the secondary bevel or the Scandi, listen to what happens. You hear that sound? That's because there are ridges, sharpening ridges that they made with their grinder that they didn't get out. So since they didn't get that out, and we're becoming super sharp, those are keeping us from being even sharper. I know it's hard to believe that, but I know the capability of this carbon steel, and I know the capability of one of my sharpened knives. Little things like sandpaper marks or grind marks on the edge makes a difference. So some people like using the stones, and the reason why they like using the stones with the systems is that it looks easier, but in the long run you're eating more of your blade. You're eating your blade to keep that, and you have to do it more often. One of my knives that I use on a regular basis for my wood processing is this guy. I make shavings with this. I use it for batoning, and I beat this all the time through wood. It's very thick down here. It's very thick. It comes to, there's a lot of meat here, more than I would like for slicing purposes, but it is great tough blade. And this knife is also, again, sharp, but I don't have to touch it with sandpaper. Or if I do, I'm touching it with 600 grit for only a few passes, unless there's some, unless I hit a nail or something. You can't really get as good with this because the blade is just too thick. But it cuts. It's an A2 steel. This Mora is a carbon steel. It's got a Scandi grind. I can take the Scandi grind out, but I don't want to take away the geometry of the knife because I use knives for a long time. And for me to file this down, sand this down to bring that bevel, I don't really need it. Just doing my stropping with a convex at the tip is sharp enough for this knife. So all in all, when you're thinking of sharpening your knives, if you're going to get into stones, you're going to spend a lot of money. And you're just going to be chasing your tail because you're never going to be happy this other stone is happier or better or something else. And then you're going to be wearing down your knife pretty quick. And eventually you'll have something like this, where you wear down the knife so much, even though this wasn't done with stones, this was done with a rod, because this is probably where the guy or woman held it when they're rodding it. But you'll start pulling your blade down, eating it away more and more. You're just not going to get that with convex. I know it sounds great that you can get this fancy thing for, you know, a couple $100, $500 systems I've seen. Nothing's going to beat some sandpaper and just stropping the blade. That's simple. That's all you got to do. And this will last, I'd say, at least 10 times longer than someone that uses stones, that has to keep bringing this edge up because they got a very weak part of the blade is right here. This is very weak. So they got to keep digging this point further back and further back. Whereas with the convex, that edge has a lot more strength and lasts a lot longer. I don't know if I exactly went in the direction that I wanted to go in this video, but I hope you enjoyed it and you get into stropping your knives and make them last a lot longer. God bless.